So there are a lot of questions that surround the reconstruction of Syria. Clearly the conflict's ongoing, but people are beginning to look beyond this major conflict phase. And while there'll continue to be conflict, the argument is that some form of reconstruction should begin. And the question then is raised, what opportunities does that provide the West? And obviously Western countries having backed the opposition, the question's been asked, will funding reconstruction provide leverage to those Western states, given that the Assad regime doesn't have the funds required and that its international backers, principally Russia and Iran, don't have the money or the willingness to fund that reconstruction effort? But what I think the challenge of this is that kind of gives you a reading of a top-down look, and I think it's going to be very difficult for the international community to achieve in peace what it couldn't achieve in war. And that's why I think it's worth looking at the growth of the Syrian war economy throughout the conflict to understand how the regime has subcontracted powers to militias, businessmen that are aligned with it to retain its authority and retain the state. Clearly throughout that process, it's been willing to give up on a lot of territory and a lot of things and pursue a strategy of depopulation. And I think it's unrealistic to expect that the regime would then completely change that strategy to reconstruct the country. Rather, it will seek to continue that policy of control and run reconstruction in a way that it will be able to control. And that will mean that it won't be willing to accept terms from the international community, and it would rather move at its own speed and continue to exclude its opponents rather than include them in a future governance settlement.
One question, why is Russia so reluctant to help the Syrian regime to reconstruct, and is repeatedly asking for the European Union to do so?
The Russian argument, I think, runs like this. The Russians believe that they have a legal mandate to have operated in Syria, that they've helped the state overcome what it dubs terrorist elements, and that there will be peace and a settlement. And at that point, therefore, it's in the interests of all to rebuild and reconstruct Syria, because without that, it will be a further cause of instability, not just in the region, but beyond. They cite further risk of terrorism, and also cite the presence of large number of Syrians outside of Syria, and argue that if reconstruction is successful, then this will be the only way to bring those populations back to the country and ensure its future. But the truth is that the bill is very big. The World Bank is estimated at $250-something odd billion, which is probably an overestimation, but regardless, it's a lot of money that the Russians aren't willing to put into non-military means.
Mm-hmm. And the final question, as we have talked about Syria briefly, which could be the main lesson that we could learn from the Libyan experiment or the Libyan efforts so far to bring stability to the country and reconstruct the country?
So I think at first glance the situations in Libya and Syria seem very different, but there are actually more commonalities than might first seem the case, particularly when you start to deconstruct the ability of the Assad regime to control its subcontractors and its loose alignment of affiliated parties. That holds true also in Libya, but the Libyan state has even less coercive ability than the Assad regime, and that means that the Libyan state's been forced into a series of payoffs, where if you look at things like human smuggling, it's sought to pay off groups to stop them from negative activity with strong influence from the Western states, principally Italy. And the fact is that they've had a policy of all carrots and no sticks, and that has effectively meant that those groups just get paid twice and doesn't really incentivize them to stop predatory activities that are damaging the Libyan economy.